Hello, everyone. This is Bobby Warren with PlayingWithPizza.com. I'm making this video to show that you can make pizza without a stand mixer and even without a bowl. So here I'm dumping out 3.5 cups of flour, or roughly thereabouts. But anyway, I grew up in Revere, Massachusetts, and when I grew up there, it was an Italian city. My great grandparents emigrated from Italy. My great grandmother lived outside the Naples region, and I used to watch my mother make homemade pasta, and this is how she would do it. Here I'm putting about a tablespoon of, or maybe about 2 teaspoons of sugar in there, and I'm probably going to do about the same amount of salt. That should be a teaspoon and a half. Do I get any more? No. And now I'm probably going to put in about 2 teaspoons of yeast. And the funny thing about this recipe is I'm doing it from memory while the video is running. I haven't seen this recipe in years, and here I am mixing everything up. But anyway, it's like 3.5. This is what I remember: 3.5 cups of flour, cup and a half of water, yeast, sugar. And as you see right here, I create a well. And like I said, my mother used to make homemade pasta, like for ravioli and lasagna, and also what we call chickadillis, which look like gnocchi. We call them lead balls because sometimes they were just so heavy. But here I am. I put the flour. Look, the water escapes. And I'm like, okay, I got to catch all that. But this is how my mom used to make pasta, and I'm thinking, let me see if I can make pizza. Just doing the flour in the well. And let me tell you, with 3.5 cups of flour, this is a lot. So this was like a bear to do. And like I said, I'm doing it from the memory of how my mother made it. Trying to remember this dough recipe I got off a Cincinnati TV station years ago. And like I said, so far we're looking at 3.5 cups of flour, I think a cup and a half of water, maybe 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of yeast, and how much salt? Did I say salt? About 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And I'm just sitting here having the hardest time trying to get this thing into a ball. You'll see shortly, I'm eventually going to go get my bench scraper and try to corral all this mess. My hands are getting sticky. And the funny thing about this recipe is, and you're going to find out later, is that I don't know if I just misremembered the recipe, but I needed a lot more flour because this thing was so what we call hydrated. It was so wet and sticky that I just had to keep adding more and more flour to it. So I don't know if I ended up with 4.5 cups of flour, when all was said and done. But I'm just trying to get this dough to come together where I can start working it with my hands. Typically, when you knead dough, you want to knead it for about 10 minutes once the dough comes together. And this dough was just not coming together. It was fun to do it, and I'm glad I did it. But as you can see, I'm just working and working and working. Eventually, I'm going to just put that water aside and just try to focus on it. So I probably should have stopped the water, earlier, but I didn't. And, you know, like I said, this thing was fun, but it was a pain. Now, as you'll see in the end, the pizza turned out really well. I was so happy with how things turned out, but it was a pain getting there. I mean, you can see how sticky this is. I'm trying to just scrape up all the dough off what we call the board, the bench, and I'm getting more. Look, I'm throwing more out there and getting more flour on that thing. Just come on, come on, flour, absorb this water. And I know some people. I have a friend Brent who has a pizza shop in, I think it's Newark, Ohio, and it's called Pizza Nerds. And he's experimented with like high hydration flours, or doughs, I should say. I think he's experimented with like 78% hydration. And I'll tell you, I have no idea what the hydration is on this. Um, now, here, you know, experienced pizza makers talk about how to add the oil later, because what happens if you add the oil early in the process, I think the oil kind of inhibits gluten formation, or something like that. Keeps So they recommend putting it later, and so that's what I did here. And again, I'm using that bench scraper to try to move it around. Look at my fingers, how sticky they are. And here I am speeding up the process because, like I said, it just took a long time. So I'm speeding this up 5 times as fast. Uh, just so you've had to endure a lot with this video already. And you see, I'm still putting more flour down, still trying to get that stuff off. When you're working with a high hydration flour, it's good to use that bench scraper. That will help you. Uh, Now I'm done with this. I'm quitting messing with it. I'm just going to cover it. I let it sit on the counter for about a couple hours. Now look at that texture. It's a little bit smoother. I'm putting more flour on it, make it easier. And here I'm just kind of covering it, getting more flour. This is what called, degassing it, trying to get some of that air bubbles out. Uh, and I'm re-rolling it again, just this idea of getting out some of that air. And at some point, I'm going to just cut this in two and form two dough balls. Here we go. So that's the nice thing about a bench scraper. It also acts as a dough cutter. And so when you're forming your balls, that sounds stupid, but anyway, when you're forming your dough balls, uh, you can fold them up on the bottom, tuck them in, and then I'm using just kind of a couple fingers, pulling that dough back, and now basically the same concept with the dough scraper, and it's going to give kind of like a tight outer shell on that dough ball, which is going to be good. And here I think I'm like, okay, I'm finished with this thing. Throw a little flour in there. I don't have one of those nice dough boxes, whatever they're called. Don't even know what they're called. So I figured this will probably do good. And I get a little flour on top of that. And so I'm going to do the same thing here. See, you're going to fold up, form it into a dough ball, and then just try to get that thing tight. Get a tight, what we call a tight skin on the outside. So you can stick that dough scraper under and spin it. And as you're spinning and moving, the dough is kind of going to get tighter and tighter. As you see this one, I don't want to use my hands as much. So here I am just finishing up. I'm going to throw it in there. So the first time the dough rested for a couple hours. And if you're going to use the dough the same day like they do with a Neapolitan pizza, and these aren't Neapolitans, these are going to be New York style, they leave it on the bench like for 8 hours. They'll use it the same day and just leave it out. So that's what I did with this. Left it out looking, more than double in size. This is going to be like I typically make like 12 to 14-inch pizzas, and these bad boys were so big that I was able to do a nice like 16-inch pizzas. Now I don't have a pizza peel that will accommodate a 16-inch pizza. So as I here again putting the flour on, degassing it, and like I said, more the experienced dough makers or pizziolas will tell you that there's a top to the dough and the bottom of the dough, and don't ever mix them up. So right here is the bottom, so that should always be the bottom. Uh, some people don't follow that, but I try to. So that's okay. Now it's getting where it is. And here, I'm just doing this video by myself. I got my Sony on a tripod, and I'm hand stretching it right now. I don't really throw the dough in the air. I just put my knuckles in, and now I'm just grasping the edges and pulling it. And you try to leave the middle alone because you don't want it too thin. And so again, I'm just kind of moving it around, and you can see that middle is a little thin right now. Uh, so I'm just stretching it and moving it, and because of the gluten, it pulls back a little bit. Gluten's almost like an elastic. And so here I'm using a pizza screen because I could not get this on a pizza peel. I think my peel is probably about 12 to 14 inches. And here I am just getting it. And I'm using a sauce, and I'm not really sure what this sauce is. Probably, like, I like using Aldi crushed tomatoes, and I just put the crushed tomato in. I'll hit it with a little salt, and then I'll hit it with a lot of oregano. I like oregano on my pizzas. And I can't remember if I kind of made a prepared sauce, because my wife likes a cooked pizza sauce. I do not. I just like using crushed tomatoes out of a can. For Neapolitan pizzas, you have to use the DOP San Marzano, right? So you need to know where those things came from. And I always use sliced deli cheese. And here I'm using provolone. When I lived in Cincinnati, there's a pizza chain there, La Rosa's, which we really love, and they use provolone cheese on their pizzas. So from time to time, I'll use provolone on our pizzas, and sometimes I'll just alternate slices: mozzarella provolone, mozzarella provolone. And but I like the slices. I don't like using pre-shredded cheese because that has like a cellulose coating on it to keep the cheese shreds from sticking, and they just get brown on the top. So it's almost like this crisp plastic edge on the top. So the cheese doesn't really melt. Here I'm using pepperoni, and it was not high quality pepperoni. And when this thing comes out of the oven, check out just how greasy it is. And I actually shot video of me taking a paper towel and just mopping up the grease. There was so much grease, but I ended up cutting that out. I'm like, yeah, people don't need to see that. But here I am. I leave a lot of space between pepperoni because with this I'm going to also add bacon. Now my absolute favorite pizza is a cheese pizza. That's about all I order. My wife likes meat on her pizza. And what I discovered is that, I'm not a big fan of a pepperoni pizza, but I do like pepperoni and bacon. Here I'd cooked up some strips of bacon, and I'm just breaking it off and putting it on the pizza. Sometimes I'll slice the bacon up, into little bits and then fry it that way. But here I just baked them in the oven. I usually cook it on a sheet pan in the oven, about 425 for about 20 minutes or so. And here I'm just trying to fill in around the pepperoni with the bacon, and if you've never tried pepperoni bacon, I I heartily recommend it. It is just a nice combination. I think the two pair well together. And so this is going to go in I got my oven on 550. I got a pizza steel in it. It's been heating up for about an hour, so boom, it goes on the steel. And after a few minutes, I'm going to take it off the rack, off the screen, and then put it on the steel. And this is after about 5 minutes or so. And see that glistening oil on there. But anyway, enjoy. Thanks for watching this video. And if you like what you see here, I'd ask you to subscribe, to the YouTube channel, and also to like this video and leave a comment. Let me know what you think, how you would do things differently. I always love to hear from other pizza makers to just learn what they're doing, what's working for them, and even what's not working for them. So if you would hit like and subscribe, and maybe hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. If you want to visit our website, it's playingwithpizza.com. This is Bobby Warren again. Thank you for watching the Playing with Pizza YouTube channel.